One.
Hello, metal fabricating world. This is Dan Davis, editor-in-chief of the Fabricator magazine. Hope you're doing well today. It's a little cold where we are in Northern Illinois. We're here to preview the January 2022, that's right, you've heard it's a new year, 2022 uh, edition of the Fabricator. Almost forgot where I was. I'm being joined today by Tim Heston, my colleague, another editor with the Fabricator. And as we get the conversation started, Tim, I think as we were preparing the January issue, you were kind of, dare I say, hyped about the cover story in terms of potential impact on the industry. And I think there's something to that as we talk about automation being more important than ever as companies look not only to maybe deal with their own labor issues, but also increase productivity. I mean, the market's hot for a lot of economic sectors. So, why don't you give the folks out there an idea of your story involving that automation?
Yeah, it's an interesting story, unique story. All the years I've been on the Fabricator, it was an interesting case study of me talking to somebody in Sweden.
Yeah.
So it was Johan Frisk, who is actually a longtime robotics industry expert and has been in the industry for a long time. He has a history with ABB as well as others. He had some time in the United States. But then he went back over to his native Sweden, excuse me, and started a company called Opiflex. And his goal was to create robotics for the small and medium-sized enterprise, high product mix production. And what he's created is what he calls a flexible mobile robot. And what's very interesting, it's kind of disarming, to be quite frank, when you first see it, because you see a robot, a full robot. It's not a cobot; it's a full-force robot without fencing, lifting pieces into a panel bender, lifting pieces into a press brake, and performing a program. But it has special scanners, Seek scanners. SICK scanners that fold down, and he has some proprietary safety technology that is, according to the company, ISO compliant and RIA compliant, and thereby ANSI compliant and Canadian CSA compliant. So it would be what happened. What a flexible robot is it decouples the robot from the machine. So you can have a bending robot, then move the robot down and have a material handling robot for a machining center. Then you can move it a few hours later to a panel bender and have it operate the panel bender. The robot is trained, so to speak, to operate machines. So it's given a program, and then but it's based on a foundation of training that they give to match it with specific machinery, so that once its vision system sees a machine and sees the tooling placement, it knows what to do. And he showed me various videos. Of course, unfortunately, due to COVID, I couldn't fly over to Sweden to see it in person.
Right.
I would have loved to do so, but various video presentations and live feeds, and it was really fascinating.
And these
And
these
along,
these units are being used in, is it beta sites or they're actual commercial?
No, they're actual fabric. It's in industry, in some larger OEMs, and a few test sites and small job shops in Sweden and Northern Europe.
Mhm.
And he showed me some videos from those shops, with it being used, being moved during a shift. The programming takes 5 minutes. It's not even programming. It's basically training. So it's like you
Right.
put it in front of the machine. It sees the part. You orient how you want it to stack, and it stacks it the way you want it, and then it can produce that batch. And it's extraordinarily fascinating, and it's one of those things that, and we shall see if it changes everything. It sure has the potential to.
Right.
Of course, devil's in the details. So we'll see how the technology matures. So it really depends. But it was really exciting to be able to talk to that. And along with that, I spoke to a researcher with the University of Skavad. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but you can read it in the Fabricator, about human robot interaction. And they are also working with Opiflex and not to go beyond the controller, or this robot has a joystick controller, but and actually literally using gestures to say, all right, point here, and this is where the part is, and this is where the part should go. And it's really some fascinating stuff. It's happening right now for material handling. It's happening right now for certain machining center setups. Press brakes, we'll see if it happens, because that's the most complicated
Right.
robot human machine interface you can possibly have. But it's quite fascinating stuff. So and you'll see it in the Fabricator.
Yeah. Do you see this as kind of ultimately supplanting what cobots might be able to offer?
No. It's complementary. In fact, he's worked with a lot of cobot manufacturers. Of course, UR is pervasive up in Northern Europe, but he calls it a coexisting robot, not a cobot. And cobots are great for collaboration. These robots, the flexible mobile robots, are not collaborative robots because you can't touch them. They're dangerous. Right. I mean, you literally get too close to them, the thing shuts down. It can't work. The suctions stop. Well, the suction remains. That's the key. It's part of their proprietary safety system, which is explained in the article. Stays for days. So he foresees, say, a fab shop with these flexible mobile robots moving from, he sees a future of all three kinds of robots: traditional robots today with value streams that are set, high volume, optimized so that they can produce, ridiculously quickly. Then you have flexible value streams where you have multiple products flowing through, and a lot of flexible mobile robots carrying those products through and working alongside humans. In other words, there's a picture that he sent with a operator operating a press brake, and then next press brake over, there's a flexible mobile robot. Right. It's still 20 feet over, so it's far, but it's part of the same department, so to speak. They're humans and robots working together, not collaboratively, but coexisting together. Yeah. And then going down to assembly, especially, he sees, that's where the collaborative robots really fit the sweet spot of just basically being able to kinetically teach them, etc. And there are some welding applications too, where cobots are just a perfect fit. Right. And
so in talking about this, you were kind of reminded of something you wrote about in December related to automation. Did you want to kind of connect those two?
Well, it just seems to come full circle. Where December dealt with automated guided vehicles and automated mobile robots, which is a different technology. It's not a flexible mobile robot, FMR. These things are not on AGVs. At one point they were, but then it didn't make any sense because these things have to lock into place into a specific spot in front of the machine. There's actually a proprietary docking station the FMR has, where AGVs they have a tolerance of where where they sit in front of the machine, but AGVs could be used for basic material handling tasks and could work together with flexible mobile robots, traditional robots, and cobots. So we could see a future of a kaleidoscope of robotics throughout the fab shop floor.
Yeah, we kind of touched upon that a little bit in January as well, in terms of material handling, not so much with devices moving material through the facilities, but I worked on a story examining material handling systems attached to these new generation of high-powered lasers, and the industry had to get to the point where they had systems that could keep up with the lasers. They're actually having pretty good success doing that, and to the point where, in the very rare instance you have a job where maybe it's a few large parts, and that fiber laser, whether it be 10 kilowatt, 15, whatever, next week it'll be 80 kilowatts, who knows? But it's gotten to the point where,
got 40
unless it's a nest filled with large parts, you're not going to be able to beat that material handling system. Material handling system is going to be able to keep up. And from there, then you start talking about part sorting, and even, I'm trying to think, I have one job shop in my head in particular I'm thinking of in Michigan, where they had all the modern equipment. They had, this is going back 5 years ago, so we weren't talking about 6 kilowatt lasers at that time, but they were still, I mean, it was state of the art equipment, and they were still had multiple people shaking and breaking those parts as they I mean, it's quite the sight. That, and when you see people actually manually grinding parts coming off a laser, unrelated to that story in January, but it's quite a shock to see that, and you know that still exists out there.
Oh, yeah. I think that was a huge point of, all the automation sources I've been speaking to recently. The people outside metal fab and outside this sector of manufacturing, heck, outside manufacturing, think automation is much more pervasive than it really is.
Right.
I always ask, like, have you visited a smaller fab shop floor?
Right.
And in fact, have you visited an OEM? I mean, even larger OEMs go to larger. You don't have, outside of automotive, there are still plenty of manual operations, especially in grinding. And especially in denesting, which is the and there are solutions out there from machine tool manufacturers, of course, and there's some especially with beam shaping technology we're seeing out there that can make that can make part takeout a lot easier than it used to be. Right. So it's evolving, but it's still an evolving science.
Yeah, and it gets to the point where I think people realize that they need to invest in that. If they're indeed going to buy that laser, the idea that you can just get away with maybe that palette changer is just not the case anymore. You're not doing yourself any favors by investing that much money in a high-powered laser and not investing in the other tools that allows you to squeeze all that productivity out of there. Yeah. And even beyond that, hopefully these fabricators are kind of taking a look at the entire process. Or not process, the entire shop floor, in terms of just how that you've used the phrase numerous times in your articles, the velocity in the shop. When that new technology hits that floor, somebody's pressing the gas pedal, and there's if you don't have your processes tied down, they can get pretty screwed up really quick.
Well, that kind of relates. I mean, as long as we're on the topic of high-powered lasers, last year I spent some time with Couples J&J up in Tennessee, which is a huge job shop in the Southeast, with some massive. They are a bleeding edge laser cutting job shop. They have more than a dozen high-powered lasers at this point, getting up to 20 kilowatt. But they have but their part takeout operation is all manual, which is very interesting. So it's their philosophy. But what they do is it's an intricate part of the training operation. So the folks who are denesting, this is how the shop manages it. The folks who are denesting are training to operate the laser, and they inspect the laser edge. And they're not just mindlessly denesting and that's all they do. It's a collaborative effort. If there's any issue with part edge, if there's any issue with, hey, maybe, and in fact, the denesters even talk with the programmers who are actually really close to the shop floor and say, listen, could you how about tweaking this nest so that denesting for this job is a little easier? Or how about, this tabbing, man, this tab is way too thick. So this micro tab has to be rearranged so we don't have to. So in fact, they minimally tab. That's the only way they make it work. If they use tabs extensively, the manual approach would not work for that. Right. But it's a management philosophy, and I think you marry that with the technology, and it becomes ever more important, because if you buy a 20 kilowatt machine and then you can't keep a laser operator, then you've got a really expensive machine sitting there that's not being optimized. So. Right,
and that type of input from people does matter. In January, I worked on a case study involving Fabrication Solutions out of Twinsburg, Ohio, and this is an individual that upgraded his laser from I think it was from 10 kilowatt to 15 kilowatt. He had only owned the laser for 14 months. Mm-hmm. So obviously, he's seeing that as his competitive advantage. That the thing that really caught me is he understood his competitive advantage, but he underestimated his need for like that automated material handling. He was still relying on a pallet system. So to fully exploit, his investment in his niche, because really he sees himself, and I think this is kind of one of the understated reasons for the expansion and the robust nature of the metal fabricating economy, is that a lot of his customers look at him as an extension of their manufacturing. They allow him to make the investment. They allow him to meet the deadlines. And that way they can focus on marketing, shipping, maybe even final assembly. And he's become the go-to guy in that particular area because he can deliver faster than other people can, and he's reliable. So, that's his competitive advantage, but yet he's learning what he needs to add to maintain that advantage. He knows that he wants to stay on top of the power surge, if you will, amongst the laser cutting devices, but yet he also needs to add that material handling aspect to fully make the most of his, I think at the time it was an 18-person shop. It wasn't very big.
Right.
The biggest downfall, and I think this is the stuff that really attracts me to metal fabricating, is that when he didn't have, he would have to go in on weekends and kind of work with the pallet system to make sure that the laser cutting machine had stock to work, and he would bring his dog with him. And he just sent me a note, I kid you not, I think it was between Christmas and New Year's. His dog has cancer. And he told me, now I have to get the tower because I have no reason to get in the car if the dog's not going to be available to him. So, only in this industry can you go from talking about $1 million equipment investment and going back to the shop dog. So, it's a very interesting point that fabricators find themselves in nowadays.
It is.
And maybe they'll get the robot dogs. I'm not sure. Maybe that's an extension.
I don't know. But
that's going to be the world's worst country song. But maybe it'll work out for these guys. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to cover in maybe January that you worked on?
Well, one perhaps final thing is William LaRue. Met him at FabTech, and he had a great presentation. He's True Fab Metal Products in Arkansas, and you're talking about hiring and hiring the next generation, so to speak. And a lot of people talk about that, and usually I guess this is how you do to attract the next generation. But this guy's 22. He's 22 years old. He is the next generation. And he's quite the engaging guy, and it was a joy to work with him on this story, with how he engaged the younger people to come on to the shop floor and say, hey, this can be your career. And again, this kind of goes back to how couples manage his denesters and floaters, and like people are cross-trained on the shop floor to ensure velocity through each. He has a mini factory approach, but this shop. They have a holistic approach as well. It's a 35 employee shop. It's a typical fab shop in that sense, but they hire specialists. They hire multitaskers. They hire multi-machine operators, and they also hire folks who are production workers who they do a big portion of the work is repetitive production work, and they need that kind of person who enjoys that kind of work. And the article goes into how he can find how he identifies folks and where they fit among those three kind of almost personality types. Obviously there's the technical skills end, but you have to fit the job to the personality type to say, all right, this guy will feel at home here. So it's not just about money. It's about this is my home for long term, and now I'm going to stay here even into my 30s and 40s, because they're hiring folks right out of high school. So that was that kind of ties it all together. I think is that where at this industry is as we enter 2022, we have automation that's coming to the floor that we've never seen, and the folks that are starting out today, in 20 years, they're going to see a shop floor that's, I think, quite different than what we see today, with flexible automation and the stereotypes that we see outside of manufacturing about manufacturing of just being totally roboticized, being totally roboticized. Well, it'll come to fruition, and people and robots will begin to work together in the fab shop. So there you go.
Yeah, it's an exciting future, I think, and I, for me, communication is the key. I'm not so sure people, even those in the industry, communicate well enough to the people that work for them to kind of express to them the opportunities that are available, but also those that aren't part of the industry as of yet. And I touched upon this in the editorial for January. Justin Mixon at Slave Steel, some of the steps he's taken to kind of bring in entry-level welders and actually approaching people who may not have thought they had a chance. I mean, I think we see it in the world around us. There are a lot of career paths for people to take, but there's not just one place where you can go and just learn about all of them. It's a little bit of a hustle. I remember my brother graduating from Southeastern Louisiana University with a degree in general studies. And 2 days before he's graduating, my dad looks at me and goes, "Where do you go to get your job after college?" Like, there's supposed to be a place on campus where they were just like assigning you a job. And it's not that far-fetched, you know? After somebody has put forth this effort and, you know, the job may not be readily available to them, you know, unless you're majoring in accounting or, I forget all the artificial intelligence, computer science, whatever it is. People just don't know. Yeah, so, you know, the case of trying to match up people who don't know with opportunities that are plentiful but yet not really publicized. It's and to go back to your point, Tim, for these shops to have people that are engaged in the culture, the processes of a business, metal fabricating company, those are the people that you want to be excited about new technology, because they're going to be able to be the best ones to kind of bring those different aspects together and make it work. You know,
right.
Bringing in somebody to implement automation who's never been in metal fabricating or maybe has not even worked for your company, I mean, that's a hell of a learning curve. And, you know, I think companies that are able to kind of grow their employees to act as that technology integrator in-house, if you will.
Yeah.
It works out best for the not only for that company, for the industry as well.
And
those are the people that have great stories to share.
And the technology integration is becoming easier and easier. I mean, OptiFlex has a platform where they're hoping where integration becomes, you know, almost plug and play eventually. In other words, they want to build up that platform so integration literally becomes obsolete. You just plug and play, and there it goes. That's the ultimate goal. We're a long way from that, but it's an exciting time. And as William LaRue told me, I'm looking at my notes here. He said, you know, I mean, this isn't in the article, but you know, there's so many jobs out there in cubicles where people have no idea what's my purpose, what's you know, it's right. they're in a big corporation, they're just a number, they're in somebody's management fiefdom, who knows. But in the fab shop, it's all a family, and they've all got a mission, and it's a tangible mission, and that is to be as productive and efficient and as quality conscious as possible. And it's tangible. It's not BS, so to speak. Yeah. So
you get to see what you make. Most
that's
definitely.
Exactly right. So
yeah. So I thanks for joining me on this. And do we have a question?
We do have a question.
Okay.
You kind of addressed it already, but are shops finding it difficult to find some level of standardization among these AGV or robotic companies?
Yeah, levels of standardization. Oh, you got that question, Tim. Yeah.
Well, there is a standard out there actually that's covered in the December issue, whose name escapes me, but it's the I can look it up real fast. But if you look in the December issue, the cover story covers a standard interoperability standard among AMRs and AGVs. AGV manufacturers are working with multiple platforms and multiple machine tool manufacturers and have middleware, so to speak. They're making it as plug and play as possible. It's not utterly plug and play, but there's a big push toward interoperability, and a lot of big players are pushing for that. In fact, that was a big push at FabTech of all places had a panel on AMRs, on autonomous mobile vehicles or autonomous mobile robots, and FedEx was there. And FedEx, you know, the 800-pound gorilla, saying you guys must standardize, and hence they talked about. And again, this is in the article, how these different AMRs can operate off the same platform. So you have different AMRs with different specialties, all talking on the same page. So very similar, you know, kind of a similar platform as, like, say, MT Connect in the machining world, OPC, etc. But a lot more plug and play. So it's not, you don't require a software engineer to make it all done, make it all work.
Yeah,
so that's the goal anyway. That's the idea.
Don't have on staff or software engineers.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah. Okay, so we will have looking forward to putting together the February issue, which we're doing right now, and the January issue should be hitting inboxes and mailboxes as we speak. Hopefully later this week, you'll find it there. Digital edition will be out early next week. And plug for the FMA annual meeting, March 1st through 3rd in Miami, Florida. It's a lot warmer there than it is currently in the Midwest, and I think out east too, we talked about.
That's right.
So, yeah, thanks so much for joining me, Tim, and thank you for joining us, and have a good one. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.